Hello everybody, welcome back to Weeb Week. This is Scalagun here. I'm doing another Japanese film today. I'm doing another Yakuza film today. Today I will be talking about the 2007 Japanese crime film Like a Dragon, or also known in Japanese as Ryu ga Gotoku Geki Joban. So this is Like a Dragon, the movie version, or for us Yanks, this is Yakuza the movie, based on the video game Yakuza 1 for the PS2. So yeah, this is a 2007 Japanese crime film directed by Takashi Miike, based on the 2005 PlayStation 2 video game Yakuza. It stars Kazuki Kitamaru, Goro Kishitani, Sho Aikawa, Yoshiyoshi Arakawa, Kenichi Endo, and Tomaro Taguchi. So this is, like I said, it's the movie adaptation of the video game Yakuza, and interestingly enough, it's directed by Takashi Miike, which is kind of cool because the Yakuza series are partially inspired by many of Takashi Miike's films. This would be like if somebody made a video game inspired by Alien, and then Ridley Scott got to direct the movie version of it. From what I understand, this movie isn't all that well liked, but people do like to keep Takashi Miike, and he is known for having a very sort of stylized martial arts sort of crime movie repertoire. He's most famous for the film series Dead or Alive, which has nothing to do with the boob video games. From what I understand, the Dead or Alive movie series is sort of like these like stylized action films about the Yakuza, and like I think they fight like the Chinese triad and stuff. I haven't seen this movie before, but I have played Yakuza 0 and Kiwami. Kiwami is the remake of the PS2 Yakuza 1 game, so I have played the video game that this movie is based on. The Kiwami added some more story elements that were lacking from the original, so it's going to be interesting because the version I played of the game had an expanded storyline, and this movie already kind of loosely follows the original game, so there's going to be even more divergence from what I've seen. But anyways, so normally I do a kind of a little plot summary before I dive into the movie. In this case, I'll just sort of rattle off from, my own perspective, because I've played Yakuza Kiwami. Yakuza Kiwami begins in the 90s and follows this up-and-coming Yakuza member named Kiryu. He is an orphan. He is best friends. His sworn brother is this guy named Nishiki, and him and Nishiki are kind of these rising stars in the Yakuza. The boss of the clan gets murdered, and it's obviously Nishiki who did it, but Kiryu decides to take the rap for his buddy, and he does a nice dime in the joint, as they say. And when he gets released from prison 10 years later, in 2005, he finds, things aren't the way they left him, and he finds Nishiki is a changed man. He's now a ruthless sort of tyrant who's, kind of working his way up the ranks and is poising himself to take over the family. And along the way, he gets embroiled in this plot, this mysterious scheme involving this young girl named Haruka, and there's a whole lot of money. There's 10 billion yen at stake. So that's kind of the plot of the video game. That's sort of a minimal spoiler version of events, because that all you find out pretty much within the first hour or so of Yakuza. That's kind of the overall plot. There's also a character who is a reoccurring minor antagonist in the series named Goro Majima, who is a pretty interesting character. He's a kind of this a man of questionable sanity who sort of follows Kiryu around and is constantly picking fights with him. And he's not really outright evil, but he is definitely a dangerous individual, possibly sadistic, possibly masochistic. He had a rough life, and yeah, he's a little wacky. He tends to wear a snakeskin jacket, and carry around a metal baseball bat. I know he's also in this movie, so he's kind of a fan favorite, and you get to play as him in the prequel game Yakuza 0, and from what I understand, you also get to play as him in the remake of the second Yakuza game, which is Yakuza Kiwami 2. It's actually, he's I find him to be a more interesting character than Kiryu, honestly, because he has more development than Kiryu does. Whereas Kiryu's always just kind of the stoic character. Anyways, so I'm getting distracted, but yeah, let's watch Like a Dragon, the movie, and I'll get back to you, kind folks, after the break. Hello, welcome back. I just finished watching Like a Dragon, the Yakuza live-action film. Let me just start off by saying there will be spoilers for both this movie and the Yakuza game in this review, so if you don't want the video game spoiled, I recommend you go play it now. Okay, if you're still here, that means you don't care. So let me keep it real with you first, dog. This movie is garbage. It's hot garbage. It's really bad. Now I'll tell you why it's bad. So, Yakuza, the game, I'm not sure how long exactly the story is meant to play out. I believe it takes place over a course of a few days. There's lots of characters, there's lots of plot twists and turns. But overall, the story is, I mentioned sort of the idea of the story earlier on. This movie takes place all over the course of one night, and it tries to condense the story of Yakuza 1 down into like a almost 2-hour movie. But it doesn't only do that. It also introduces new characters and new storylines. The new characters and the new storylines are garbage, though. They're the weakest parts of the movie. They were really boring, and they were... Okay, so one thing I should also talk about before I delve even further is that the Yakuza games generally have serious storylines. They're exaggerated and over the top in some degrees, but the storylines themselves are serious. As side material, though, they're full of wacky side quests that kind of lighten the games up and make them really kind of whimsical. But the actual main storylines are completely serious, life and death Yakuza matters. They're over the top, sort of Hollywood versions of it, but they're serious. This movie makes the mistake of just being like, oh, well, the Yakuza games have a lot of goofy, silly stuff in them. Let's just make the whole movie very kind of slapsticky and full of wacky, silly jokes. It doesn't work. Now, how this movie plays out is it's like I said, it's all over the course of one night, and it has this sort of narrative to it where it's like one of those movies where it's like, this is all taking place in the same city, and all these different storylines, and all these characters, they all intersect, and it's, one of those kind of movies. But the new storylines they added are all garbage, like I mentioned, and there's no sort of rewarding conclusion to any of those stories, and as a result of giving time for those stories, the actual main storyline in the sort of Yakuza 1 narrative suffers as a result. And what you have is, you have main storyline of Kiryu. By this point, he's already met Haruka, and he's already sort of traveling with her and trying to find her mom. There's no, real backstory given for that. You only briefly find out about the whole, Kiryu went to jail thing, because he meets with, Inspector Date. And then there's, so they're looking for her mom, and Date kind of, mentions, the whole, oh, there's 10 billion yen missing, kind of thing. You don't really find out anything, I don't even think they even mention that, Nishiki is, his sworn brother or anything. They're just oh, Nishiki's looking for the money, and the money's missing. That's kind of, all you really find out about that aspect. And then, so, Kiryu ends up, at the end of the movie, after a bunch of boring side quest stuff, he ends up getting to the Millennium Tower and confronting Nishiki, who has no explanation given for his character. And they have, a really just kind of uninspired fight where there's no like emotion at stake. You don't really feel anything for the battle because like there's no context for it. And then, so before I go over the full end, I feel like I should tell you how the video game version of Yakuza plays out. So, in the video game, Nishiki and Kiryu are best friends for life, and they're sworn brothers, they're like blood brothers, and after Kiryu took the fall for Nishiki and went to jail for 10 years, Nishiki became this sort of evil, headstrong guy who decided to take over the Yakuza. He found out about this plot involving 10 billion yen, and he gets involved with this corrupt government official who runs a group called MIA. I don't think we ever find out what that's an acronym for anyways. So Jingu is the guy's name. Jingu has a daughter and wife. His wife is this girl that Nishiki was in love with, and the murder that set Kiryu into jail was the murder of the boss of the family, Kiryu, Nishiki's, mafia father guy, that he tried to, basically molest the girl that Nishiki was in love with, so Nishiki killed him, and Kiryu took the blame for it. And then a few years later, that girl, she fell in love with this guy Jingu, and they had a kid together, and Jingu, yada yada yada, he's an evil jerk now, and he wants to kill his wife and daughter. And he has 10 billion yen stashed away that he plans on using for evil government purposes. So this all leads up to the money getting stolen, and it's all a plot by the woman. Her name was Yumi. And anyway, so there's all this kind of there's lots of twists and turns, and it all kind of accumulates with Kiryu leading Haruka back to Yumi, and Yumi has the money. She's in the tower, Millennium Tower, which is this newfangled building, and it leads to a big confrontation between Kiryu and Jingu. He beats up Jingu, Jingu passes out, and then he has to fight Nishiki. He beats up Nishiki, and then Jingu comes back and tries to kill them. Yumi ends up taking a bullet to protect her daughter, and Nishiki kind of has like a sort of moment of redemption, and he kills Jingu and then blows himself up with the money, and then rains money on the city streets below. That's kind of how the main storyline of the video game is resolved. What you have in the movie version is Kiryu shows up to the Millennium Tower to rescue Haruka, has been kidnapped. He gets up there, and he has that really boring fight with Nishiki that's over in like a minute. Nishiki passes out, and the helicopter with Jingu, who is completely unexplained whatsoever. There's no context for Jingu being in this story. He's flying there. He gets, he's like, flying over to the tower, and Yumi explains, oh, this was all a plot, to kill Nishiki, and then she, like, pushes a button on her detonator and blows herself up. And the helicopter also gets, crashes because one of the side stories that was added to this was this sort of Korean assassin living in Japan who, like, his storyline was really boring, and it didn't do anything. He just was, like, he kind of walked around and then talked to a bunch of people, and he got a gun, and then he sniped some people, some, like, mob guys, and then he finally ends up assassinating Jingu, which is, like, okay, like, why even include Jingu if he's not going to be relevant to the plot, and he's just going to, like, have no dialogue and just dies. So anyways, Jingu dies, and the helicopter blows up, and the building blows up, and then, like, Kiryu and Haruka walk out of the building, and they're okay. It's so stupid. It's such a stupid, weird, like, butchered version of the ending, where there's, like, basically nothing matters. There's no impact. You don't care about these characters. You don't understand the context of why they're doing things. It's just, like, this is, like, some kind of weird, it feels like a fan movie. It feels like some fans made like a 30-minute movie, and then they needed to pad out the movie, so they like added a bunch of scenes that have nothing to do with anything else. So like the other like side stories that aren't really relevant, there's one about like these two sort of bad bank robbers who don't realize that the 10 billion yen that was like being held in the bank has already been stolen. So they're like holding everyone hostage for no reason, and they're just like really incompetent. And like the big joke is that because this movie takes place on the hottest day of the year, and one of the incompetent burglars ends up shooting the air conditioner. So like throughout the, as it gets progressive, as like their scenes progress, they're progressively more sweaty, and they're taking off their coats and stuff. And at one point they have to take off their masks to like wring the sweat out. It's so funny. And then the other, probably the most odious of these added storylines is kind of like this like young Bonnie and Clyde story about this young guy and his girlfriend who decide to start robbing stores, and then it turns out that the reason he was talked into it by his girlfriend is because like his girlfriend needs money because she owes money to the mob. It's the worst storyline out of them, and it's of the added storylines, it's the one that gets the most screen time. It also contributes probably the least because it's not even relevant to the plot in any way, unlike at least the bank robber storyline was like had tangentially relevant to the plot because it involved the money. But like the stupid thing too is like Inspector or like Detective Date has a couple of scenes in this movie. They could have like tied him into it more and had him be more of a character if they also tied him into the bank robber scenes, because there is like also like a sort of a companion piece to the bank robber scenes is that there's like this group of cops outside the building who are like monitoring the situation. So they could have at least had like Date do that in the scenes where he wasn't, like they could have like, instead of having like the sort of main cop there just be Date, to give Date something to do to at least tie it in more to the main plot. But they don't even do that. They can't even do that. And then so I also mentioned that there's the plot about the Korean assassin who's just like a guy who was hired by Majima to kill Nishiki, but he doesn't even do that. He just ends up like shooting Jingu, and that's like his only real thing he does. He helps out like the sort of Bonnie and Clyde story characters, but like I don't care about that plot whatsoever. And then the other kind of relevant one is they do add a bunch of scenes with Majima, and basically they try to make like Majima seem like more of a threat than he was in the video game. They also like make him like more baseball themed than I think he was intended to be, because like Majima in the video games, like you do fight him at like a batting cage place, and he does carry around a baseball bat, but like in this, like his whole gang carries around baseball bats, and like he at several points like has people like like pitch baseballs at him so he can like hit them with the bat and then hit people with them. They really play up the baseball angle on Majima. But anyways, the guy who plays Majima is actually pretty entertaining, so he's like kind of like the only decent character in the movie. The guy who plays Kiryu is not like very physically intimidating, and like Kiryu is supposed to be like kind of like a big guy for you, who is kind of like a big tough guy, but this guy who plays Kiryu isn't very intimidating. The guy who plays Nishiki just looks like some dude, like it really is just like they just looks like they picked like a guy who had like longish hair, and they're like, hey, can you like slick back your hair and like wear a suit for a scene? And the guy's like, yeah, sure, and like, go ahead. And then like the other minor characters, they don't really look like what they do in the game. It's a bad movie. I really don't recommend it to anyone at all. Just play the Yakuza video games, I guess. Go watch like Battle Without Honor or Humanity. Maybe check out the Dead or Alive movie. I haven't seen it, but from what I understand, it's supposed to be really good. Maybe I'll give that a look. Just don't go see the Yakuza movie. It's so stupid. I wouldn't recommend it. Like, honestly, this movie is like almost 2 hours, and I had to watch the movie in 1.25 speed, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to sit through it. And even at that speed, the movie was still slow. I don't know how you can make, that's one of the perplexing things, too, about this movie, is this movie is, like, I think it was, like, an hour and 50-something minutes. They could have cut it down to, like, an hour and 20 minutes, an hour and 30 minutes, by getting rid of a lot of the side story stuff that had no impact on the plot. Or they could have just fleshed out the whole movie and made it, like, almost 2 hours, but actually explain the plot a little bit and give you context for what's going on. Because this movie basically assumes that you have played the game and that you, like, you know, remember all the intricacies, but then it also does liberties with them, so then it's like you're not even faithfully following it. One other thing I want to mention. So I did mention that there was a lot of slapstick and stuff in this movie. It's... So, basically, the scene where he fights Nishiki, Kiryu has been shot. He's weakened, and he's, like, you know, injured, and the first time he fights Nishiki, he gets clobbered almost instantly. He goes down, and Nishiki's goons surround him, and they're about to finish him off. When he pulls out a bottle of Staminin, or maybe Toughness Emperor, one of the healing items from the video games, he just pulls out a bottle and, like, cracks it open and drinks it. And then, like, they have, like, this, like, dramatic, like, psh, 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 like, cuts of, like, the bottle and, like, yeah, kind of music. And then he gets up and he's, like, glowing with blue fire. And then he fights Nishiki, and it's like, did they really just do this? But they did. They really did that. They really went there. So yeah, this movie is bad. It's just a dumb, stupid movie. Don't recommend it. Don't watch it. There's a reason it's hard to find in America. If it was shorter, I think if this movie was half an hour shorter, it would qualify for the so bad it's funny kind of category, possibly. But given the fact that it's like 2 hours and nothing happens until the very end, it's not a fun movie to watch. I mean, if you're a die-hard Yakuza fan, maybe just watch the scenes with Majima, because those are kind of entertaining, but other than that, don't waste your time, buddy. Just go play the video games. That's about all. Thank you. Bye.